to visit. But not if you're trying to avoid beers and all that fun stuff. Anyway, Poconos. All right, gang, I'm showing it's time, and I want to be mindful and respectful of yours. So first and foremost, let's get going here. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to host these webinars and hopefully provide you with some value. And we appreciate the opportunity. My name is Bill Kaiser. I'm the Senior Vice President at CultureWise, and I'll be your host for the next 60 minutes and hopefully keeping you awake for that time if hopefully you didn't have a big carb lunch and feeling a little bit groggy, so to speak. So there's good news and bad news regarding today's webinar. And I think the good news is that there are a lot of you here and still coming on today. This is a topic that seems to resonate. The bad news, toxic employees. This topic seems to resonate, which means we probably have a few in our business, more maybe than we'd like to admit, but hey, we're not alone. It happens. And I'm excited to tackle the topic with you today. And I think I'm in fear of being oversimplified. I will simplify this. There's kind of two buckets that we're going to talk about today. But before we get into it, let me just share with you a little bit regarding, I'm going to move my picture here so I can try to pretend like I'm looking at you, which is always tough in a virtual call. Some logistics. Use the chat box for questions, or if you want to add to a point that I'm making, if I happen to stumble across one, feel free to add in the chat box any of your comments there or questions. Some of those questions will be addressed during the presentation. We've got teammates behind the curtain looking at the chat box and adding their thoughts if need be, or directing me to some of those questions if we have time at the end. And I hope to have a few minutes there that we can kind of do a Q&A if that works. And as always with logistics, I just want to make sure everyone is aware that the bathrooms are over here to my left. So there you go. A reminder for you all. We have a summit, a culture summit every year. We've done it 8 years now. November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in Philadelphia, we'll be conducting our annual culture summit. It's a great opportunity for those of you that are embarking on a culture journey, those of you that perhaps may be clients of ours, or just interested in hearing from people that have successfully rolled out a culture operating system and hear from them the impact that it has and pick up some best practices. So we get great reviews regarding our summits each year. And I just want, have you heads up for it. And if you go to our website, you'll see details about the hotel in Philly. And we actually have a discount prior to April 1st if you sign up for our webinar. Basically, it starts with a get together on Wednesday evening, a full day of speakers and best practice sharing and breakouts on Thursday, and then half a day on Friday, and you're back home. So just put that on the calendar or investigate further or send me a note and I'll give you some more information, certainly. Again, setting the stage for today. Two buckets, general buckets of conversation. One is, how do we greatly reduce the likelihood of allowing a toxin to get into our company? And I'm going to use the word toxin. It sounds like a harsh word, but we'll define better what we mean by toxin, but we'll use that word for now. But how do we greatly reduce the likelihood, of allowing them through our gates? I don't know if we ever eliminate. We're going to make a mistake. Things fall through the cracks, but we'll talk about that. And then two, what do we do with the one or two, or the one, hopefully it's just one, anybody that's in your organization now that you feel is that disruptive employee, somebody that did sneak through, fell through the cracks, so to speak. How do we handle that? That won't take a lot of time to talk about, but they're the two buckets that we'll get into today in our conversation that kind of frame things. So a couple things for attending this webinar. You're going to get a copy of the webinar. You'll get a link to a toxic employee tip sheet. You'll get a link to an accountability culture assessment, because we're going to talk about accountability that goes well with what are we tolerating in our organizations and holding people accountable to what. And then also there's a 9-minute video that I do a lot of speaking to Vistage groups, a lot of CEOs. And at the end of those meetings, I offer a 9-minute summary video of the concept that we're going to talk about today. We're going to touch briefly on it, not have a chance or the time to go into great depth regarding what we offer, not necessarily what we offer, but why we attack the problems out there, what you can do to be more intentional about culture. So I'll send that along as well. That may be helpful to share with leaders on your team to say, hey, do we want to dig deeper on this? Is this something that we want to be more intentional about in our organization? And that may be some good information for you to pass along to others that aren't on the call, so to speak, or leaders if you're not leaders necessarily. Okay, there's a quote, and this, I've done a webinar before and I quoted some educators that had something similar to this, but we at CultureWise, we talk about this quote a lot, that you can tell a lot about the culture of any organization by witnessing the behaviors that their leaders tolerate. And you think about that there are some rogue employees, and if allowed to stay, they can contaminate an organization. It happens. And I think many of you on this call, that's why you're on the call. It's happened. You work next to somebody. Your employer has allowed this. You as the employee realize you have some of these employees. Your culture is defined by those behaviors. And what you're willing to tolerate says a lot about how good, bad, perfect, great, needs improvement culture that you have. What happens is these conditions, they drive good employees. If you have those folks in there, and we're going to talk about this, unfortunately, they drive the good employees out of your companies, and what happens is you're left with the bad apples. So again, I think it's an important quote or an idea, and we talk about all the CultureWise family. We're talking about this all the time, that I can tell a lot about your culture by witnessing the behaviors you tolerate. Here's a quick poll question. It says poll question 1, and whoops, I didn't mean to go there. I'm going to release my poll question now. You should have that. I'm curious as to your answers. How good is your company at holding people accountable to the behaviors you expect? What do you tolerate? Give this a couple minutes here. We've got the number. There we go. Keep climbing. Keep climbing. Appreciate you jumping in. I was thinking about this as I was putting this poll out. I will end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. Yeah, most of us are in the middle 2 blocks, which some could say, Bill, nice job in coming up with, what's the difference between those two? Most of us need improvement. That's why we're on the call. I'm curious, and I'll be expecting those that say they're real good at holding people accountable. Feel free to throw, as we get to topics throughout the day that may address that, or through the next hour. It's not like you're committing your whole day to me. Share some ideas as to how you do that, because I think that's a problem. And part of the problem and why we have toxins and why we allow them to stay is a question of we're not real good at this. So we'll stop that. And did I share the results? I think I did. There they go. Okay. We'll come back to another one in a little bit. Let's move forward. Let's first talk about set the stage. Let's define what we mean by toxic. And again, it's a rough word, but this is a tough topic. So the anatomy of a toxic employee. Here's the glowing list of, and not to muck around, but hey, here we are. What's the bad apple? The bad apple is they make things harder for all. They ignore policies and procedures. They're disruptive. They're deceptive, deceitful, disrespectful. They're unethical, uncivil, unappreciative. These are the folks, you know it better than I do. They take all the credit when times are good, and they point fingers when times are bad. They don't make mistakes, but they sure as heck let other people know when they've made mistakes. And I think also under toxicity, let's lump in the chronic underperformers, people that just don't get the job done. And I know that drives a lot of folks, it stirs them up to allow someone's working not pulling their share consistently, but yet they're still there. Sometimes that causes confusion and can rankle a few of your good employees. These folks, they're a source of friction. They're HR nightmares at times. They're inappropriate. And they're done that, sorry. Anyway, they have their own set of rules. So when you think about a toxic employee, when you think about that disruptive employee, it could be one of these bullets, some of these bullets, or God forbid, all of these bullets. But that's a toxic employee. Let's take a peek at the typical bell curve in our organizations. What's our staff look like? This is a typical breakout of any set of employees in an organization. Let's go to the right. That's where we want to spend time. Our all-stars, 10 to 15% of every company, typically 10 to 15% of your staff, they're the all-stars. They excel no matter what. They roll up their sleeves, they get dirty. They come in early, they stay late if need be. They give credit rather than ask for it. They help others. They're great listeners. Their attention to detail. You name it, you know who your all-stars are. These are the people that we would love to clone if we could clone people, right? 10 to 15% of your staff. I hope that some of you on this call have more than that, a greater ratio than that in your organization. Let's go to the other end of this wonderful little bell curve with faces. We got our stinkers, right? This is where the toxins live. I think we do a good job of generally keeping that percentage to 10 to 15%. But the challenge with that is, yikes. I am sorry, folks. I just had a power outage, and I hope I'm back. Let me know. Let me know I'm back. Thank you, Carl, for letting me know. Let me describe a panic that sets in when something like that happens. Holy goodness. Let's get back at it. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to play from the current slide. Are we engaged here? Bear with me. Well, things are, my computer is, I'm sorry, folks. This happens and we write this in our diary.
Yeah, I just gave you back host, Bill. You should be good.
Yeah, what are you seeing, Tyler? Thank you.
Your face.
Well, I apologize for that. Please bear with me, gang. Let's get into, I want to share my screen. I want to share that screen. I want to play from current slide. Tyler, give me a heads up if you're. Are we back to the Big Apple?
Yep, Big Apple.
Let's hope it doesn't happen again. Gang, I had this a couple of weeks ago. Couldn't figure out what the problem was. It stopped. Let's get back into the bad news of identifying those toxins. We came up with our list. We talked about the disruptive nature. We're back to our people. We said, hey, those toxins reside over here. They reside in our stinker category, the people that we hired that got through, fell through the cracks. Perhaps we made a mistake. We've all made a mistake hire. 2, someone that turned out worse. They started off guns a-blazing, but then they petered away and we lost them as a productive employee. They're not necessarily a contributor. They've become disruptive to some end. I think as a whole, we keep that percentage to a minimum. But it's the few in there that can wreak havoc in our organizations. The ones in the middle, the swayers, the go with the flowers, that's where we can move the needle in our organization. They're the people we really can improve the effectiveness of our organization. That's where we build a higher performing culture because we teach, coach, and mentor those folks and we develop them into all-stars. But if we don't create the environment that keeps out the toxins, if we don't create the environment that allows innovation, creativity, voices, people are clear about expectations and how to become an all-star. If we don't create that environment, they drop into the stinker category. And what we're doing now is fostering a growing number of disruptiveness. We're fostering a growing number of toxins. So that's what we want to avoid. That's typically what we look at in terms of your employee makeup. What are the effects of that bad apple? Now that we've looked at the bell curve, well, Harvard Business School did a study in 2021, 60,000 interviews. And this is what they found. 50%, half of your workforce, their work effort decreases because they're working next to one of these folks or 2 of these folks. 38% of them, their quality intentionally decreased. These are scary numbers, and I'm not trying to mock an alarmist, but this is the impact. 1/4 of them take out their frustrations on customers. Oh, that's a good long-term business success model. 3/4 decrease in engagement. That makes sense. I'm surprised it's not even higher. 2/3, their performance declines. So now the bad apple is ruining the rest of the apples around them. 8 out of 10 of them, they lose work time worrying. 6 out of 10 of them lose work time avoiding the person, the toxin, the disruptive employees. Here's an alarming statistic. 12% of those employees will quit. Let's think about this for a second. 12% of those employees in the survey are going to quit when around this type of an employee. Let's go back to this graph for a second. Where do you think those employees are leaving from in this particular graph? If you've got chat, throw it in chat. Is everyone seeing everything? Good, beautiful. Where are they? Are we losing employees out of the stinkers, the swayers, or the all-stars? No doubt about it, right? Star. Can we afford to lose all-stars? No, we can't. But that's where they're going to leave from. Stinkers don't care. They want more stinkers around them. Swayers, they're just going with the flow. Whatever. No, we're going to lose quality employees. And last time I checked, it's not real easy finding all-stars. The pond that we're fishing in for future employees has only a few fish in it. We have to take care of our all-stars. We have to create the environment. We can't allow the toxins to exist in our organizations or bring them in. We can't afford to do that to our all-star category because we're trying to grow that number. If we allow this to continue, your culture suffers severely. If we allow this to continue and the toxins to remain, trust in the leadership, in our leadership, it erodes. And if we allow this to continue and we allow the toxins to stay, the entire business reputation suffers. We don't hire people. We don't get hired by our clients out there. Here's an interesting number. A toxic culture is over 10 times more likely to contribute to your company's attrition than compensation. 10 times more likely to contribute to attrition than the compensation plan. People, as we've said before, you may have heard this before, people quit people. They don't quit paychecks. You got to be there with the money. I'm not saying, oh yeah, let's, no, you have to be there, but it's interesting stuff. So, okay, we're mucking this up a little bit, creating perhaps some angst over the topic. Here's another poll question. Let me launch this one just to get your feel. Poll question, let's go. Poll question number 1, here we go. A poll has been launched in this meeting. Great, yes, we want another one launched. Let me just ask you this. In chat, indicate yes if you currently have at least one disruptive employee. Oh boy, that's, I'm seeing rapid fire yeses thrown throughout the chat. Okay, we're struggling. So let's talk about what we can do. 2 prongs to this. We're talking about preventing having to deal with this in the future, which is something that we can do right now. And then we're also going to get to what do we do with those exist. The problem is prevalent. Obviously, we've already confirmed that at the beginning of this and through some poll questions. So how do we create the barrier against the toxins? Let's put up the big fence around our building, so on and so forth. My dad always told me, you're always going to win the fight you don't get into. Maybe there's a chance for us to not have to worry about dealing with this problem in the future. And when I put up a webinar next year for toxic employees and how to leverage our culture to combat that challenge, only 2 people want to sign up. So let's go there. How do you create the barrier? 1, you have to clearly articulate the behaviors, how you expect people to act. Crystal clear on what you expect, how you expect your people to act and behave. If your team or your direct report is unclear about what's expected, they're reluctant to ask questions, and the chance of them delivering that desired result is slim and none, right? You can't assume everyone's going to work and define your values if you have 5 or 6, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Everyone's going to have a different definition to those values. It's up to us as leader to clearly articulate what's expected. This is what it means to honor commitments here. This is what it means to listen generously. And when you have that clarity, it's easier down the road, and we'll talk about it, to hold people accountable to those levels of behavior. Number 2, not only do we have to create this wonderful recipe of behaviors that we expect out of people, but we now have to practice and teach and coach from that list, if you will. We've got to practice this stuff day in and day out. We can't just carry a fitness app around and expect to get better. You got to put the time in. Coaching is a critical void from the experience I have in talking to a lot of leaders. They don't necessarily have a curriculum to teach and coach from. We've got to be a better job of systematically teaching these behaviors over and over and over again. Number 3. Yeah, you got to hire people that fit the culture. If we do a better job in step 1, gang, aren't we going to do a better job of finding people that fit that list of behaviors that are critical to us? No doubt. Are we going to go? That's what I said earlier. We're going to decrease the likelihood of hiring bad employees, hiring toxins. We're never going to go 10 for 10. We're going to have mistakes in there. But 8 out of 10 on the new hire success rate is much better than 5 out of 10 in terms of employees sticking with us. That's a big impact to the bottom line. It's a big impact. You know, I've gone through it. I've recently had to fill a void in our organization, and it's a drain on everyone. It's a drain on everyone. So we want to be better at hiring people that fit our culture. Define your culture with those behaviors. When you bring people on, there's a dramatic impact on how well you onboard those new employees, how long they will stay from you, how long they will be all-stars versus turning into toxins or disruptive employees. You have to roll out the red carpet. They have to understand how important your culture is. They have to see leaders that lead by example, that their actions speak louder than their words. You got to get your entire organization around this, because none of us like going through the rehire process. We need to find them, the A+, and we need to keep them and keep them happy and create the environment for them to flourish. And toxins will weed themselves out. We'll talk more about that. Shout it from the rooftops. Your culture is permanent. You can't just bring it up in a review. What? Where's this coming from? I never heard about that value, whatever the case may be. Your culture is important. Keep the toxins out. You know, in our old days and in a previous life of mine, an insurance company, our culture, as defined by 30 behaviors, that was the artwork around our building. You couldn't escape it. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It was prevalent. We all had the opportunity. If someone walked in late to a meeting, they just walked by the honor commitment sign. And when we talk about honor commitments, we talk about be on time for all meetings, phone calls, and appointments. Do what you say you're going to do when you said you were going to do it. So we want to shout from the rooftops and hold and make sure our culture is very visible. The behaviors, the expectations, everyone is clear as to what's expected. The more likely to soak in, well, the likelihood of it soaking in and we internalizing it is helped by how prominent it is displayed in our organization. Step 6 in creating that barrier. We teach and coach and mentor the living daylights out of our staff. That's what our job is as leaders. If we want a better organization tomorrow, I've got to have better employees tomorrow. And it starts there. And we've got to do a better job of helping people get to where we need them to be. And here's the beautiful thing, helping people get to levels they didn't think they were even capable of on their own. That's what a teacher, coach, leader does. And that's the ticket to a higher performing organization. It's also the ticket for creating all-star after all-star after all-star. And someone mentioned this in chat. I saw this earlier, and we'll talk about it. But you know, your best recruiting tool is your A+ happy employee. They won't let toxins get in the building. But you create more all-stars, you've just created a great talent recruiting pool. A little bit more on that a little bit later. Number 7, our leaders have to lead by example. I know some people, we've all been around some great leaders. They walk the talk. They don't say one thing and do another. Humility is a fantastic descriptor and attribute of a great leader. I think it's one of the most important attributes of a fantastic leader. I think the worst trait of a leader is humility, another H word, or excuse me, humility, there you go, way to repeat yourself, is hypocrisy, saying one thing and doing the other. Nothing will erode the confidence of your employees and disrupt success more than a hypocritic leader. It also gets the all-star spot. You can't have it. You can't, as a leader, talk about values or behaviors that are important and then allow someone that flies in the face of all that to stay in your organization. Ding, ding, ding. We'll come back to that. Last but not least, here we go. We're going to talk about this in greater depth. We got to hold people accountable. Be crystal clear on expectations, coach the living daylights out of people. And then if they don't get there, we have to have tough conversations. And we're going to talk about why don't we have those, right? That's a tough, I'm not making light of that. I've had to do this in my past. We all lose sleep over it. I'm not making light of it. We take it very seriously, right? The challenge. But sometimes we have to come to the conclusion that we can't coach them to where we need them to be. They're not performing the way we need them to perform. They don't embrace the behaviors and the expectations like all the other employees do, regardless of their sales numbers this past quarter, regardless of their technical skill. We have to hold people accountable to those behaviors that we outline. Otherwise, we're hypocrites. So what is the ultimate defense against toxicity? It's your culture operating system, which I basically just described. These are the 8 steps. This is what we call our blueprint for it. And I highly encourage you to be more intentional with your culture plan. Many of you on this call work for companies that are gung-ho on their 2023 strategic plan. I take polls and Vistage meetings with CEOs. How many of you have a strategic plan you're working from this year? They all raise their hand. How many have a sales and marketing plan that you're working? They all raise their hand. How many of you are just writing checks until the checkbook empties? Or how many are working from a finance operations budget? They all raise their hands. By the way, prior to that little poll that I do with CEOs, I ask them to rate culture in terms of its importance to the success of their organization on a scale of 1 to 5. How important is culture to the success of your organization? They all give it 5s. And then they go through those polls and they raise their hands that they have a plan for a strategic plan, a finance plan, a sales and marketing plan. Then I ask them, do you have a culture plan? Crickets. Wait a minute, you just gave it a 5, but you don't have a plan? We as leaders, as a defense against toxicity, have to be way more intentional with our culture plan. We're letting them in too often, gang. I know that sounds like remedial in a sense, but hey, this is about toxicity, how to leverage culture. We can stop allowing them in the building. And you do that with a plan, not a hope, a wish, a dream. You do it with a plan, and this is the plan. 1, define with great clarity the behaviors that drive success. 2, practice those behaviors and teach from that platform. Find people that fit those behaviors in the interviews. Welcome with a roll out the red carpet in terms of onboarding, that most of you call it onboarding. Communicate it, shout it from the rooftops. Give everybody, as you know, some that have been on the calls before know what we do and our clients do. There's our culture defined, those behaviors. Everyone carries that around, but it's also on your walls. It's on your website. Get it on your website. Say, toxic people, stay away. This is why you should join our organization, and give them the reason, a compelling reason to join your company. That's your culture. 6, 7, and 8, we just touched on. We've got to coach better. We have to lead by example, walk the talk, get engaged, and we have to hold people accountable. And that's a huge step in the process. I'm getting all sweaty now. My socks are going up and down. Let's get into the 3 steps out of that wheel. I'm going to talk about define, number 1. I'm going to talk about number 2, ritualize, and I'm going to talk about, spend a little bit of time on accountability and what we mean by that. Number 1, I totally respect that you have values in your organization. I'm going to say this, it's not enough. There's not enough clarity in the vagueness of these wonderful virtues, and I'm not kicking them to the curb. But again, everybody in your organization, unless you're crystal clear with bullet after each of your values, telling me what the heck it means to be accountable, or what's quality mean here, or integrity, so on and so forth, these aren't enough. They're ideas and they're vague by nature, and they're tough to witness. We can't have vagueness around this. We're not setting up the barrier for toxicity if we're not clear as to what's expected around here. That's why we talk about culture and behaviors. Be crystal clear, be instructional. You'll notice these are action-oriented, they're verb-like, they're instructions, and they're easy to witness, they're easy to see, they're easy to coach from. Set clear expectations, honor commitments, practice blameless problem solving, deliver results, have fun. Listen, but the list goes on and on and on and on. They're easier to observe. And we as leaders need better coaching and teaching platforms. When you create a list of behaviors, you've got your curriculum to teach and coach better. We're setting clear expectations. That's the first part. The second step, what's a ritual? Throw in chat. What's a ritual? How would you define a ritual? 1 or 2 words. When you think of the word ritual, what does that mean to all of you? See what you have to say here. Where are they? What is a ritual? Type it in. Did we lose our chat again? There we go. Nancy, right. Habit. Automatic routines. Do it without thinking. Sorry for this example. I've used it before. Next time you get out of the bath or the shower, there's a routine, a way you dry yourself each and every time. Creepy thought, sorry, but I can't tell you what mine is right now, but I know I do it the same way every day. And that's what we talk about. Rituals, things happen automatically, not just sometimes. You know, we talk about Brushing our teeth. Here's the example. We didn't debate that. Chris Ladelfa, maybe you did this morning, but most of us didn't debate on whether to brush our teeth this morning or not. We just do it without thinking. The national anthem is played before every sporting event in our country. These things happen automatically. Ritualization makes practice happen. Ritualization allows us not to get distracted with all the other stuff going on. Rituals are the defense against eroding discipline. Here's something. Go to your gym on Saturday morning. You'll get a great parking spot. If you had gone to your gym on January 8th, there's no parking. You might as well just go right and get your coffee, meet your buddy. That's what happens. Our discipline erodes. So we've got to practice in some form or fashion these behaviors. We've defined clearly what's expected. Now we got to teach, coach regularly. What's that look like? By the way, that's an older version of our fundamentals here at HPC, also known as CultureWise. We have 30 fundamentals. That defines our culture. It's pretty clear as to what it takes to be an all-star at CultureWise. And we focus on one of these behaviors every week. That's a ritual. It happens without fail. So how does that? So fundamental of the week, however you define your culture, if it's 20 behaviors, 25, by the way, most of our clients end up between 25 and 30 behaviors when they go to this level and this deep a dive with defining their culture. You're going to focus on one of those behaviors, one of those fundamentals. We talk about fundamentals, behaviors that are fundamental to your continued success. You focus on one a week for the rest of your career, and you just keep rinsing and repeating. You get to week 31, if you have 30, you go back to number 1, so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. We've created an app, not to make it a sales pitch, but a lot of people, don't sit behind their computers every day. And I'll talk about this in rituals. Let me give you an example before I talk about how to utilize technology. One, a weekly. So you have your fundamental of the week, the behavior number 1 that drives success in your organization and what you want people to do more of. The leader of the company, if you have, let's say you have 25 fundamentals, week number 1 is fundamental number 1. You send out a weekly insight to your team via email. Every Monday morning, 8 o'clock for the next 25 weeks. Chris Ladelfa, as CEO of your organization, the next 25 weeks, you send an insight out on your fundamental week to your employees. You're leading by example. You're teaching. You're showing this matters, which provides a platform to hold people accountable to these behaviors. Week 26 comes around. You've exhausted all 25. Guess what? You go back. Now the leadership team takes the next 25-week rotation. And then after that, it goes to your employees. We're not stopping this, gang. This isn't a squirrel. Latest management book we read. No, we stick to this practice, this routine of rituals. So that first ritual for your fundamental of the week is the weekly insight. It shows there on the left. Here's a second example of a weekly ritual. To reinforce, to be systematic with our teaching and learning of these important behaviors. We call it the first agenda item. Many of you on this call maybe have safety meetings. You have sales meetings, ops meetings, team meetings, stand-ups, staff, financials, huddles. You've got meetings already. We're not asking you to turn the apple cart upside down and all of a sudden start creating all these committees and projects. You have meetings now. So piggyback on those meetings that exist and talk about that fundamental of the week. And you do that in a way that it's very quick and easy, so to speak. You start a meeting. Chris Ladelfa and I used to work together, so we'd have sales meetings on Mondays. Maybe at the beginning of that meeting, before we get into the sales agenda, so on and so forth, I'd say, hey, Chris, we saw David's email this morning on honoring commitments. What's the impact of a prospect or a client of ours questioning our ability to deliver as promised? What's the impact of us showing up late on a prospect meeting without calling in advance to let them know? We'd get a brief conversation going about our fundamental of the week, and then we move on to the rest of the agenda. You do that several times throughout the week. You get different people talking. You ask different questions. And all of a sudden, we are focused. We're not just waiting for some episode to occur to do a coaching session. We're teaching systematically. And that's the key to rituals, is over and over and over again. The Ritz-Carlton for 20 plus years does this every day. They have basics. There are 20 of them. And they review a basic every day. Day 1, basic 1, day 20, basic 20. Day 21, rinse and repeat. We go back to number 1. Every day, everywhere in the world, they're on the same basic. They have a daily huddle, daily lineup. It's 9 to 10 minutes. The first thing they do in that huddle, that lineup, is review one of those basics per day. They've been doing it 20 plus years. I guess it doesn't work. an institution that is held in high regard for excellent service and not suffering from accidental greatness. How do you avoid accidental greatness? You do this routine, practice, teaching, coaching. Excuse me. Okay, good examples. Another poll question. Is this really the, I don't know if this was, we're going to try this and see if it works. I'm not sure if it will. There we go. Stop sharing. Let's see if we can go back to poll question. There we go. What's the main reason for allowing an employee, a toxic employee, to stay in your organization? There's multiple choices here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time. I'm just curious as to where this lands. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of things you don't want to see, all of the above. I mean, it's there as an option. That's they're all good reasons. I'll let this go for a little bit here because it takes longer. I know we've got a number. Yeah, okay. I'm going to shut it down real quick. Again, main reason for allowing a toxic employee to stay, they're difficult. It's a difficult skill. They've got a skill that's tough, and especially in this market. I understand that. Legit. We're afraid about documentation. We're like, why are they not fitting here? What's the problem? How do I pinpoint this? I'm concerned from a legal standpoint. They're a longtime employee. They've been here 30 some years. We don't have the capacity. This is going to shut us down and have us take 2 steps backwards to get another employee up and running. We can't afford that kind of resource drain. Maybe me as a leader, I have some guilt that I haven't really given this a full shake. I haven't given them my time. It's a failure on my part, and I don't like to admit failures. That could be something getting in the way. So here's the result of the poll. 17%, the biggest. Most of you, all of the above. They are all legitimate reasons that the toxins exist. And here's the point I want to make, and it may be that those results, let me know if those results shared. Someone give me a thumbs up. There we go. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Allison, Amanda, everybody else. Good. We're all good. I apologize for some of these technical snafus, but we're making it. We're going to make it. The challenge, these are all legitimate concerns. There's no doubt about it. They're real. And I don't want to make light of how difficult it is to get rid of toxins and to end someone's employment. The damage, these are all legitimate reasons, but none of them are powerful enough to prevent us from making that move, because the pain associated with these reasons is real, but the pain of allowing that person to stay is bigger, is more detrimental to your organization. It's, you don't want the consequences of that. We talked about it earlier. You're going to lose the good people. We can't lose good people. We got to get rid of the bad apples, plain and simple. So now what? Again, this is difficult. So a couple of steps to take. We have a toxin. We know that we have, and you all said yes to that particular question asked earlier. We don't take it lightly. And again, you heard me say before, in that coaching piece in our 8-step framework, we have to be better coaches. We're huge advocates of coaching and teaching and mentoring here and working on relationships and helping people move to the all-star category. We have to do everything in our power for that to occur. That's step one. But at some point in time, if they don't get there, we need to make that difficult decision. So a couple things to talk about. What do we do in that instance? First and foremost, we speak straight, right? We have to have a conversation with this employee. We have to let them know that there's a problem and specifically what that problem is. And when I go back to our framework and talking about the steps and how do you build the walls and create, prevent the toxins from entering, I talked about the clarity and setting crystal clear expectations. Sometimes it's difficult to pinpoint what the heck's going on with this person, but not if you've clearly defined your culture, not if you can say there are certain behaviors, whether it's lack of honoring commitments, whether it's, make quality personal is one of our fundamentals. The quality of the work is inconsistent. You're not treating everyone with dignity and respect. And we can hearken to specific examples of specific behaviors that we highlight as what we want, what we expect in our organization. And now it's not that kind of, I just got a weird gut feel. But I've got to sit down with that employee yesterday and say, hey, look, there's something amiss. Something's not working here. And specifically, I'm concerned about X, Y, and or Z. We have a problem. First step, you got them? Let's deal with it. Every Vistage talk I do with 10 to 12 CEOs in the room, how many of you have a toxin right now or an employee that needs to be dealt with and it's not happening right now? 75% raise their hand. Okay. First thing is acknowledge you have an issue. Acknowledge you have an issue. Number two, set clear expectations moving forward. We talk about expectations on the front end. That helps having many of these conversations, but now I'm having this conversation. I've acknowledged that there's an issue. Now I have to be crystal clear and eliminate any confusion as to what's expected moving forward. I need you to be on time. I'm asking you to be engaged and present. I'm asking you to do the extra to help others out and not just shut down when others are seeking help. I'm asking you to step up with the quality and your output. Whatever the case may be, I need to set crystal clear expectations to this employee now, moving forward. Is it 30 days? Perhaps. 60 days? Perhaps. But outline a plan and get specific and clarity around what's expected moving forward. Next step. Okay, we talk about this. It's kind of redundant, but it's real life. I got to hold you accountable to what we just outlined in those expectations. And I've got to coach you to that. I need to support you. I'm clear about where I need you to be. And now I encourage you to get there. And whatever help I can provide in that process, but you've got to improve X, Y, and Z. And we're going to checkpoint this in 30 days. And maybe you don't even wait that. Maybe there's weekly check-ins. How are we doing with quality? How are we doing with your responsiveness? Whatever the problem is. How are you doing with customer relationships? Whatever the case may be, coaching, holding people accountable, providing feedback and guidance aimed at their improvement. Makes sense, but are we doing it enough? You know why we don't do these steps? Because we haven't set clear expectations at the front. We haven't been crystal clear. And then last but not least, we have to make the decision. We acknowledge there's a problem. We decide we're going to do something about it, and now we act. And this question, typically, when it comes down to this, separate two thoughts, because I think we get clouded in this at times. Decide, should they be part of your organization? That's the one question. Just focus, not how. Should they be part of your organization? If the answer is yes, okay, that's one decision tree. There we go. Then we're working on it. But if you decide no, then you go to how we're going to do it. Keep them separate. And I know that sounds remedial. If they shouldn't be part of your organization, now the next move is figuring out the alternatives to separate in whatever your way is, and with dignity and respect and so on and so forth. It's not an easy decision to come to, but when we talk about that decision, that goes back to that step 8 in the process, right? Hold people accountable. That's where we're at here. That's deciding. Here we go. We talked earlier about, I can tell a lot about the culture of your organization by witnessing what you tolerate. Are we tolerating that all-star salesperson who brings in the big monies? They're the quota buster. She's always bringing in the dollars. However, she's not treating everyone with dignity and respect. She's late. We have a couple of customer issues. Once the products, whatever the case may be, yet we keep her here or him because it's tough to find someone with that kind of power, if you will, that kind of skill set. Not the reason to keep them, not the reason at all. Let me just get to, that's step 8 in the process, is making that go or no go decision. Think about this, and this is what I find interesting. What happens when you make that decision? You can throw it in the chat. I'll cover a couple of these, I think. What happens when you make that decision? Usually there's an organizational, there's a staff, and there's a personal sigh of relief. It's difficult. It's hard to make these decisions, but there is a sense of relief because you've done the right thing. The person typically knows it. You know it as well. There's also a collective, what took you so long impression from the rest of the organization. I think about this, and I've said this before, and it's cheesy, but I do cheesy. Wizard of Oz, I still am like a 60-year-old man that has nightmares over the flying monkeys. But think about the scene in the Wizard of Oz when the wicked witch gets the bucket of water at the end on the head. She melts. I'm melting. I'm melting. And all of a sudden, those scary flying monkeys, they seem a little bit more friendly to me. The guards that were curmudgeons, they are all happy. Everyone's dancing. And that's what happens when you make the move to get rid of that toxin. Your people appreciate it. Here's what else happens. Those all-stars you have, they step up. They fill the void. They help you cover the gap that's being caused by losing an individual. Your all-stars are thankful, number one, they've stayed, and number two, they're your resource to get out of this challenging time. Those all-stars will help you hire the replacement. Those all-stars will help train your replacement, and you're better off for it. We've got to make those decisions, gang. We have toxins. We've got to avoid them, number one, and do a better job of creating the barrier around our business that allows them in. We talked about that with an 8-step framework, but now some fall through the cracks. Acknowledge that you have them, decide that you're going to deal with it, and act. And I think this is a little bit of a framework there for you to actually go about doing that. We always say here at CultureWise, good companies have good cultures by chance. World-class companies have world-class cultures by design. I'm hopeful you can't have an extraordinary, most of us on this call you're successful, your companies are successful. And what we're talking about today, whether it's toxicity or being more intentional with your culture framework or your plan, it's not the difference between success and failure. But I do believe it's the difference between success and extraordinary success. And you can't be in an extraordinary organization without extraordinary culture. And you can't have an extraordinary culture void of toxins without having and creating extraordinary people. So I hope this gives you a little incentive perhaps to go and act. Keep in mind, again, utilize tools. Tyler reminded me earlier, we have an app, maybe you have apps utilizing technology to practice and make your culture even more visible throughout the day in the work life of people that don't sit in front of a computer just to get an email. Utilize an app. Everyone has a smartphone. Make your culture vibrant. Teach, coach more regularly. You'll weed the toxins out. They will weed themselves out. And you can get back to creating all-stars and soaring above the massive amounts of competition that we have in the marketplace. We have time for some questions. Just a reminder again, and Tyler, I'll ask for anybody's help that has a question or put it into the chat. If you have one, we'll be looking for it. You'll get a recording of this. You'll get a toxic employee tip sheet. You'll get an accountability culture assessment as well, and then a 9-minute video that you can share with leaders if you wanted to dive deeper, just kind of summarize a webinar that you were on. Again, it's not a sales pitch for CultureWise, but hopefully that is important. Feel free to reach out to me and give me some feedback or ask questions. This is my email address, but I'm hoping that you got something out of today. So any questions that are coming up, here we go. It's Nancy, to everyone. Yes, I've downloaded the CultureWise app. So the CultureWise app is for our clients. So we populate the content. There's no content for anyone coming in. You have to be a client of CultureWise. I can certainly talk to you, Nancy, if you're interested in learning more about that. But our app is specific to us. So CultureWise app is specific to our clients who have developed a set of fundamentals, and then we help populate their app with all the good information that we've talked about today.
Real quick, Bill, want to jump in here. So we do, for everyone, I will link in the email going out at the end of this, a link to we do offer a CultureWise app demo that will allow you to test drive the app as well as an option in the follow-up emails.
I saw a comment earlier. Thank you, Tyler. I saw a comment earlier that's worthy of addressing, and maybe it sparks another question. Please feel free to, you can even ask me what my favorite football team is if that moves you. But Kevin had a great comment here that it seems that stars leave because they see too much hypocrisy about walking the talk of cultural fundamentals and allowing toxic behavior. And I think that no doubt that hypocrisy word is critical, and it's the death knell for a strong culture, for a great team, when you have one set of things being done or said and another being acted upon. And we have to avoid that, gang. And I think that set yourself up for success, be crystal clear with those expectations, hold people accountable. Boy, you're off and running. The impact of a powerful culture, you sell more, you have more A+ talent, your A+ talent finds more A+ talent. It's a wonderful snowball that gathers a lot of momentum. And let our conversations in the future be more about how to attract and retain those A+ talent rather than how to avoid the toxins. So good luck with this. Any other questions? Oh, there's another question, Leon. Let's see if I can. What do you do when you know you have a toxic employee bad-mouthing others, but they are so under the radar, no one will come forward with proof that the employee is throwing others under the bus? Wow, that's a great question, Leon. I think that if you know you have an employee bad-mouthing others, so that indicates to me that that's fact, that is provable in a sense. We have a fundamental called speaking straight, Leon, and speaking straight is saying, hey, have the guts to say what needs to be said directly to the person it needs to be said to. So maybe, Leon, I would have a conversation. Hey, Leon, I just, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, which is another one of our fundamentals, assume positive intent. But I've had a couple of people talk to me that you've said some negative comments about other employees. And I'm coming to you because I want to deal directly with you about that. I haven't, and I want to share that with you. Where's this coming from? Any feel? Like, I would engage in a conversation right the heck out of the gate with Leon. In a high-performing culture, in a high-performing environment, your employees feel empowered to have that direct conversation themselves. Hey, wait a minute. Leon, we don't talk about each other that way. If you have an issue with Bob, go to Bob. But don't, there's no use of talking to our lunch table about your thoughts on Bob. Go to Bob. And we get to police ourselves that way. All-star employees don't allow toxins to act like toxins for the most part. And if you have an established culture, that it's nice that people just hold each other accountable. It's not just a leadership proposition. Hopefully that helps.
I would jump in here, and I think something that would help is, I think about one of our fundamentals of speak straight. Like, nobody in our company would go behind the other person's back. It would be, you would address that directly with the person you're talking about. And I think it highlights what you were just talking about.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else on the, I guess we don't have to drag it out. I don't see any other questions. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Reach out to me if you need me. Any more questions come up later. We're an open book here. Would love to continue the conversation. Thank you for your time and effort. Apologize for some of the technical snafus. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's time to move. But we'll see. Not sure. I should know this, but we have another webinar. Be on the lookout for the next webinar. And again, we appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time. Have a great rest of the day, gang.